because I'm a dumbass. And we've never done a live podcast.
We've barely done a regular podcast.
That's not true. We've done, this is episode 32 of Pod Sawthon, a Lovecraft book club. Thank you. Thank you for all coming. And tonight, we're going to be discussing Herbert West, Reanimator, a very popular story, apparently, during this London Lovecraft Festival, which we're recording at right now. So, but since this is a horror podcast, it might not be for everyone. I promise I'm not going to read the whole time. Notably, though, these are your trigger warnings. We'll be discussing the reanimation of the dead, which naturally involves the description of human death, murder, and homicide, impiety, corpse handling, grave robbery, the cannibalization of a child, and animal testing. We may... Yeah, thank you. Real big fans for animal testing here. It's weird. We may also cover topics such as megalomania, the folly of science, the use of firearms, a grossly unbalanced power relationship, and an unlicensed boxing match. Finally, there's weirdly little of that. And also an indescribable reptile.
You forgot the massive racism.
No. New paragraph.
Oh.
Finally, it should come as no surprise that because this is a Lovecraft show, there will be discussions about the othering of minority groups and individuals, notably Italian, Polish, and African Americans. And as I said, this is live from London. Did not introduce myself. I'm Todd Beardsley.
I'm Claire Reynolds.
And we are live and undreaming from London in front of a live studio audience. Suck it, New England. We're in England proper. Yes. So, Claire, did you read the story?
I did. I finished it about 10 minutes before I walked over here.
Awesome. Just by applause, who here has read or listened to Herbert West M-Reanimator in the last year? Yes. All right. About half, I'd say. For the other half, don't worry. We'll do some recapping, I guess.
Maybe they've seen the movie.
Have you seen the movie?
A movie.
Jeffrey Combs, Stuart Gordon. All right. Not Brian Yunza. Not Bride of Reanimator. Surely no one's seen that. Yes.
It's okay.
It's fine. Actually, I have thoughts.
He's seen all of them, so.
The third one is worse. Thank you. I will say that. So you read it.
I did.
Initial thoughts.
So before I ever read this, I definitely saw the Stuart Gordon movie, and by Stuart Gordon movie, I mean the Jeffrey Combs movie. I watched it at least twice with Todd, and it wasn't until I started reading it that I realized that Herbert West was not the director of the movie.
Yes, it is not Herbert West's Reanimator.
I've seen it. I've never caught on that, like, when they're yelling West, they're talking about Herbert West.
Talking about the guy, right. Yeah. So I like the movie a lot. I do, like, it has grown on me. Here's what I'm going to say. Herbert West M-Reanimator is widely considered by many, including no less an authority of S.T. Joshi, to be Lovecraft's worst story, which is why it was quite surprising to me that there's not one, not two, but 3 shows at this festival involving Herbert West Reanimator. I've come around. I really dove into this story. I really liked reading it and researching it and figuring out, like, what are the influences and what does it really mean. And, I used to be one of those people. I grew up with Lovecraft and, not like as a toddler or anything. That would be insane. But I did.
He's actually way older than he looks.
Yeah. Yes. Howard and I, we were both very sickly. And I will say that, like, I was one of the ones, right? I was one of, like, the pretentious teens who said, like, Reanimator, it's just like a ripoff of Frankenstein. It is not, and we will get into the whys and wherefores. Yes, you have something to say?
No, I have no opinion on that.
Okay, I have loads of opinions. So.
I mean, Frankenstein's way better, obviously.
Yes,
Come on,
but for different reasons. And Mary Shelley is a treasure.
It's a brilliant book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. They are different stories. Thank you, audience member who I cannot see. I will say that, like, so overall, in reading this, like, there a couple themes. A lot of people like hold up Herbert West Reanimator as like, oh, this is not really Lovecraft. There's no like cosmicness in it. There's no Cthulhu. There's no Yog-Sothoth. It's not really. It's not real Lovecraft, right? It's just a pastiche. But like honestly, like one of the central themes I think of Herbert West Reanimators is the relationship between our good friend, the unnamed narrator, who shows up a lot in Lovecraft stories. The relationship between the narrator and the named protagonist, let's call him. This shows up in Pickman's model. It shows up in the Statement of Randolph Carter. It shows up in From Beyond. From Beyond, of course, is very similar, arguably better than Herbert West Reanimator. And also starring Jeffrey Combs, also Stewart and Gorham film. It's very good. But like and then in this one, and I'm sure there are others, right? There's often a place for an unnamed, somewhat passive narrator who's kind of getting dragged along by a like, let's go find those secrets man was not meant to know protagonist. And I find this like very autobiographical, right? For Lovecraft. Like Lovecraft obviously casts himself in the role of the narrator since he's the one, holding the pen. But I do think that like in a lot of times he sees like what he like, and I'm sure this is me just like interpreting it and me putting onto Lovecraft, my own thoughts, but he sees himself as, as both the narrator and as the protagonist of like that's what he would want to be, kind of, but then he changes his mind like in the middle and then just kills off the protagonist, right? So the protagonist almost always, spoiler alert,
oh.
Herbert West dies at the end. I'm sorry.
Well, we don't
you should
know
have
that.
read the story before coming here. Not in the movie. But yeah, and I think it's like very much like a duality in the fiction between like Lovecraft and himself, Lovecraft and his relationship with the world, Lovecraft and maybe some imagined opposition. But yeah, like I think that actually is the thing that makes it core Lovecraft and like why we shouldn't be just like snubbing our nose and turning our back on Herbert West Reanimator. And this would have like been much more powerful if the entire festival was not somehow involved with Herbert West. But I didn't know that when we picked it.
I think it's more fun.
I think it's more
really
fun.
dig deep.
Really can. And I think also like the test of time has shown like what do people know about, like, if anyone has heard of Lovecraft, our lovely tech, by the way, is in the back. Thank you so much.
Laurel!
She was setting up with us, and she's like, oh, so what is the show? And I'm like, oh, it's a podcast. It's about Lovecraft. I'm like, okay. What's Lovecraft? And I'm like, well, let me tell you. And but I do think, like, of the people who do know who Lovecraft is, they know Cthulhu, possibly End of List. And they probably know Herbert West because of the movies and because of the way like Herbert West has survived the last 100 years, reanimated over and over again, and in other media, right? Like there is a Go on.
No, it just that's the you've been talking too long button.
New topic.
This time. Yeah, no, let's get into the story.
Let's do it. All right. Yes. All right. So the new story, the story, right? So it's a six-parter. If you read it straight through, you will find that there's a lot of recapping between each parts, and this is because it was serialized. It was first published in 1921 in the 1921 series. It was under the original title of Gruesome Tales in an amateur magazine called Homebrew, and Lovecraft got paid $5 per issue. Good job. And but this is like 1922 $5, so that's like
$10.
$10. Good job. And so we open with West and the narrator. They already have a relationship. They're in Miskatonic University, by the way, first mention of Miskatonic. They are in Arkham, also the first location of Arkham. Arkham is actually mentioned in an earlier story, but not the location. And they are discussing Herbert West's fascination with reanimating the dead. He wants to fix death. He believes that, once someone dies, that may not be the end of the story. You could definitely maybe reanimate them with some reagent, and he does. He goes through a lot of guinea pigs and bunnies. You want to jump in here anytime?
No. My next notes are about Dean Halsey. That's
okay.
Yeah. No, I have written down Dean Halsey, Dean Wormer from Animal House? ?
Okay.
So I don't know if anybody who's familiar with Animal House, but I definitely feel like this could have easily parlayed into a lot of hijinks. Like they get kicked out of the school and then they gotta try to get back in.
Maybe win a race.
That's not what happened. Yeah. A lot of
some kind of river race. All right. So they're messing around. Actually, so I feel like part one, the critics are right. No, very good. I don't really like it. I don't have many notes on it. But we do have a quick passage in there about grave robbing, and I quote, "The process of unearthing was slow and sordid. It may have been gruesomely poetical if we had been artists instead of scientists." So if you listen to the podcast, you will know that our last story we reviewed was The Hound, which was written 2 years after this. And thank you. And The Hound is all about the artistic robbery of graves. So this is one element of Herbert West that does get reanimated.
Grave robbing as art.
Grave robbing as art, which I am
somebody has done a PhD on that somewhere.
Yeah. And that's literally the only note I have on this, other than the relationship. Anything else on part one?
No, the beginning's just kind of setting it up. I mean, there's a lot of talking.
Yeah, a lot of talking, a lot of hey, wouldn't it be cool if? It ends with them going into, so they get this house out in the middle of a field. They're waiting for it. West thinks oh man, this would totally work if the bodies were fresher. And so, as luck would have it, a fresh body arrives. It is somebody who drowned, so they have all their organs, not too much disease, everything's cool. They go dig them up from the potter's field, bring them back, and bring them back to life, right? Or they think bring them back to unlife. They think that it doesn't work, and they're like, well, drat. And then they go bury the guy, and then later, and then there's a scream, and they freak the fuck out, and then they run away and knock over a lamp, burn down the house, and they're like, wow, that was a close one. Anyway, end of story.
Like I said, Animal House.
Yeah. We flash forward a year later to part 2.
I have ran and left poor guy behind.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So part 2 is entitled The Plague Demon, and this takes place as they're just finishing their studies. They've technically graduated, but they're doing some postgraduate work, and a typhoid outbreak strikes Arkham. And incidentally, this is also the first mention of the phrase Arkham horror, because that's what this is. It is an Arkham horror, and it is so. A lot of crazy shit goes down in this one. This is where the story starts picking up, right?
It's a lot of crazy shit goes down in this one.
And so in Plague Demon, the narrator and West, they're pressed in the service to treat a bunch of typhoid. Turns out West is actually kind of a good doctor. The reanimation is kind of a side gig. That's where his passion is, but he will cure typhoid, I guess. And they do that, and also the dean. And then meanwhile, but Wes is pleading with Miskatonic and saying Miskatonic University Dean Halsey.
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 Halsey. Yeah.
How do you pronounce it?
Halsey. That's what I said.
Yeah, Halsey. Dean Halsey is he's hold my beer. I'm going to cure all the typhoid. And he does. He goes out and he helps the stricken. He doesn't care how dangerous it is. He goes out, he does the thing, and he almost works to death and then dies from typhoid. So there is a hasty service. The whole town comes out. They're like, oh no, he was such a hero. And then later on, after the service, all of the students, it's a wake essentially, and they go to the bar. What's the bar? It's a Commerce House bar.
I don't remember.
And they go to the bar and they're having some
It's
drinks.
the Winchester.
It's the Winchester, and they're just gonna wait for this whole typhoid thing to blow over, and and then West turns to the narrator. I keep wanting to call him Dan Kane because that's his name in the movie, but it doesn't have a name in Lovecraft. And
It's okay.
he turns and he's like, the quote is like, "Let's make a night of it." And he's like, "I'm in. I get you, my dude." And so then smash cut, 3 a.m.
Weekend at Bernie's.
Spoiler. Smash cut. The Weekend at Bernie's him back to Halsey. I can't do
Halsey. Halsey.
Nuclear. It's pronounced nuclear.
All right, so it is Halsey. I can't do it.
It doesn't matter.
Never
Dr.
mind.
H.
I'll fix it.
Dr.
You know
H.
what?
There you go.
Normally, we edit the podcast before we release it, so all of this never makes it in. Sometimes it does. And so they Weekend of Burnings him back to West's place, where he happens to have some freshly prepared reanimation reagent. And
What luck!
Yeah, but they come in and they see the landlady, and they're like, "Whoa, we were out." And she's like, "You boys, and don't you know there's a pandemic out there?" And he's like, "Yeah. Fuck you, masks." And then they go back upstairs, and then they go, and then there's a crash, and there's a fight, and then the landlady and I guess cops come at some point. Maybe I don't think cops come in this one.
No.
And
No cops yet.
but the window's open, and it turns out their friend beat them up and ran out and leapt out the window. Then, unconnected to these events,
I just have to pop in the idea. Yeah. Okay, so we have a 12-year-old boy. Mm-hmm.
Get some of this.
The idea. No. What really happened? Okay, so no, we just had a friend. We came back, and then he just I don't know what happened. He beat us up, and then he ran out the window and ran off. Like that was 100% a 12-year-old boy's story.
Yes. Not a new doctor's story.
Right.
An educated Miskatonic man. So they're like, okay. So anyway, unrelated, there is a rash of cannibalism in Arkham. It's quite shocking. Like 17 people are eaten parts of.
That's a lot.
It's not all of the person. It's not like bones and all.
Yeah, but you're dead.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a lot.
He's got a.
This is not a big town.
It's not a big town. 14 of them were killed. 3 of them were already dead. So if that helps.
Not really, but.
And then they catch the guy. They're like, okay, so the cops are tipped off, and they have the dragnet, and they do catch the guy, and they pop him one, but it's not a fatal wound, and they manage to catch him, and they put him in Sefton Asylum, and that's where he stayed for 16 years. End of story. So, good job, everybody. In the text, I have a few things. I'm just checking that. Oh, we got loads of time. You're stuck.
I do have 2 things.
All right.
And unfortunately, I didn't pay for the ability to highlight my notes in the app, so I had to write it down separately. But
we are professional podcasters.
This made me think. Okay, so like all of these people that he's bringing back from the dead, they don't seem happy about it.
They are there's no consent.
No, and I don't know. Has anybody here watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Or have you? Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It made me think. He
Except
didn't
me.
ever watch it. Yeah.
I'm the only one. I know.
It made me think of like when they brought Buffy back from the dead, and she was pissed and depressed. It's like, wow, I don't want to be back here. I was in a really good place. So that made me think of that. Yeah, so don't bring your friends back from the dead.
In just as a quick aside, in part 2, Wes talks about Puritanism, which I believe this is where you can hear the words of Lovecraft coming out of West's mouth. He says, and I quote, only the greater maturity could help him understand the chronic mental limitations of the professor-doctor type, the product of generations of pathetic Puritanism, kindly, conscientious, and sometimes gentle and amiable, yet always narrow, intolerant, custom-ridden, and lacking in perspective. This is a very long way to say "okay, boomer," basically,
Right.
is what I read here.
I did that too. I have West equals millennial, Halsey equals boomer.
Very good. All right. 2 for 2. Awesome. And this is, I think, and I do think, like, this is intended to make it, like, by this time, we should not be seeing West as a monster. Like, West is a hero. And I think because of these, right? Because, like, Lovecraft is writing for that, like, kind of like edgy, kind of atheist person who reads a sci-fi magazine. This is its second issue ever.
Wait, he's intending for, you think he's intending for us to see
I
West
think by
as
casting West as anti-Puritan is making him like a rakish hero.
Okay. All right.
No?
Maybe so my first my first exposure to this was the Jeffrey Combs. So
Right.
I could say, who
Very much a
absolutely, yes, just a villain.
though?
He's villainy.
Is he?
Villainesque.
Let's
Villainish.
let's put a pin in that.
Okay. All right. I do want to get to, this was my favorite quote in this. Like most youths, he indulged in elaborate daydreams of revenge, triumph, and final magnanimous forgiveness. I was like,
That's what all youths think of.
oh yeah, I definitely had these, and it made me think of Ralphie from A Christmas Story. I don't know if
Right.
That's
Yeah.
like-
It's
yeah.
like, oh, we're so sorry. Yeah. Yep.
I forgive you.
I have a bunch of bullshit about the sins of Puritans that I'm not going to get into because I don't care. And it
But
took
the
forever.
last, are we talking about the last line in the? Okay, now this is the first time.
Oh no.
We're not there yet?
No. We're there. Yeah, do
Okay.
it.
Where I felt like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about Lovecraft. I'm reading this and I'm thinking, God, this is someone who takes himself very seriously. But then I finally got to the end, and it was the last line when they're talking about like how the body ran off and it didn't work out. It was, damn it, it wasn't quite fresh enough. And that is the first time
Fresh maker.
where I thought, maybe he was trying to be funny. I don't know.
He definitely was. Well, and that's the thing. It's so. According to reports, I'm not going to pretend like I've ever read an issue of Homebrew, which was first published and last published in 1922. But from what I understand, it's like an amateur creative writing kind of a comedy magazine.
Okay.
So like
Okay.
things have like a dry wit.
Okay.
I guess. But yeah, I do love
The fresh maker.
yeah, you got to
Yeah.
just get them fresher, man. That's the trick. That's the whole trick. So, all right, end of story. Yeah, perfect.
That story.
And part 3, 6 shots by midnight. And so the pair, they have graduated. They are licensed.
I have written down, these assholes graduated?
Somehow graduated. And, well, there was a typhoid.
That's
outbreak.
true. Come on, we need the doctor.
Hey, do you know? This is not my job. I'm not going to even do the joke. Okay, I'll do the joke, but I'm going to cut it out. Do you know what you call the person who graduates bottom of their class?
Doctor.
Yeah, exactly. So, thank you. So they moved to nearby Bolton, Massachusetts. They set up as general practitioners, and they reanimate a prize fighter who died in a fight. And that's pretty much the whole thing.
Nothing to see here,
Yeah.
folks. Zero racism.
Yeah.
Oh, my
No.
God.
Okay, so this is, so content warning, racism. First off, the name of the person they reanimate. So they go to, he talks a lot about, Italians and
Yeah, so he
and Poles and everything. And it's
he
just
gets
everything.
them all. folks.
Yeah, this is the one where Lovecraft is like, oh, okay, I've got my groove. I'm a little more comfortable.
Yeah,
I'm
they're
loosened
paying
up.
me.
Racism. Let's go. And so he talks a lot about other people, right? The names though of the boxers are rad and not racist. The two boxers are Kid O'Brien, who I can only assume is an ancestor of Chief Miles O'Brien, and the
right.
Harlem Smoke, which is A fucking awesome name
I
for a
assumed,
boxer.
like, I couldn't figure out. I mean, I really like it, but then I thought, well, if he just came up with that for like, he's talking about skin color, then that's not cool. But also, that's just a really cool name.
It's still a
I
cool
don't
name,
know.
and maybe
If
he dances around. You
That's
know,
what
I
I'm
don't know.
hoping.
That's
what
what
I'm hoping.
choose to believe. And so, also, yeah, probably not that.
It was no. I have oh lordy, the racism.
Yeah, my
written
note
down.
right here is like it's an excuse for Lovecraft to ejaculate his racism all over the place. There's no need for this. So,
Yeah,
he was.
Yeah.
Let's just underline that. The question from the audience was he really racist? It wasn't that question, but it was basically that. And it's like, yes, he was. He was racist for his time, even, and for his play.
Which is even worse.
Yeah. Like other racists were like, "Oh, Lovecraft, pull it back." Yeah. Yes.
Can you just? I have written down, this could not get any worse, and then I wrote, it got worse. No. And that's what we were talking today about. How like he was up in New England.
He's in Providence, Rhode Island. Now,
there's no
I don't know.
excuse.
Just
No
applause.
excuse.
Anyone been to Providence here? No. Yeah, we have because we were on that side of the ocean. Yeah. So he grew up and lived in Providence. I've also spent a fair amount of time in Boston. Providence, historically and today, is like, imagine Boston. Imagine what you think of when you think of Boston. Well, I guess you guys are on the losing side. But
Oh!
But Boston is quite liberal. Providence is like 10 times more than that. Like Rhode Island itself was like the place where like you go if you were like not cool with the Protestant or the Puritans down in Boston. So like Providence is super liberal, and like it's not cool to be racist there. It's not cool to be racist anywhere, especially in Providence. Anyway, we have to move on. No, absolutely not. No, he put a lot of thought into it. Yeah, he wrote a whole thing, which I'm not going to talk about. Like a whole standalone, long thing.
We've had a lot of talks about like okay, we
if
just
you
have to
want to
acknowledge
explore Lovecraft's racism, can I recommend episodes 1 through 31 of Podsothoth? I believe we're the only Lovecraft podcast that actually dwells a lot on the problems of Lovecraft personally, and still really like the stuff. So it's art and artist. So anyway, like there's a fight. The Harlem Smoke is tragically killed. They're like, cool, and
there's no way Kid O'Brien won this fair and square. No way.
You think maybe there was like a little shiv or something? Yeah. So probably. I mean, the name like O'Brien. Wow. So, oh no. So one note I do have here, when they are taking the Harlem Smoke back to their basement laboratory to reanimate him, they're very. The quote is from the story: "Our fear of the police was absurdly great, though we had timed our trip to avoid the solitary patrolman of that section." So it's like, how many people have played like a stealth video game like Hitman? Yeah, so it's that. Like they just had to wait for the sight line of the one cop to move so they could like scurry across the road with their corpse and do their bit. That just really struck me funny when I was reading. And that's pretty much all I have in part 3. You good?
I guess. I mean, like, if you totally left out the part where,
Yes.
like, the
the
body comes back to life and then eats a child.
Oh,
but,
right.
No,
I did say that there would be
right? Yes.
we were promised child cannibalism.
He ate a baby.
I did. Mea culpa. Missed that part. Missed that trick.
But yeah, well, because it's horrific.
Yeah,
So.
it is horrific. They find the reanimated Harlem Smoke. You know, nom, 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 like this baby. I do like how by the way, it is like what in our modern eyes would see as a baby. It's a 5-year-old, right? Now, this kid...
He probably had a job.
Yeah, you probably... he's like at the mills. Like, but it is...
He's like,
in
oh,
the
what's
text,
this guy doing?
in the text, they're like... They do talk about, like, how like, oh, yeah, this kid does run off every once in a while, but he's always back, like, by dinner. Yeah, it's like, it's 5. What is... Okay.
He's running numbers down.
Yeah, he's running numbers. All right. Are we now?
Part 4.
Part
I'm
4.
ready. The Scream of the Dead.
Scream of the Dead. Do you want to recap this one, or do you have any notes on it? Like,
no, I'm trying to remember.
I'll recap it.
Yeah,
so
you recap
Wes, so Wes creates a new embalming fluid.
Yes. No, I had... Go on.
Yes.
I have some questions.
So, there's like a nice little side story here in Lovecraft's personal life. But Wes creates this. So, okay, the narrator is off to visit his family in Illinois. And
it's a good state.
It's a fine state. One of the best.
One of the best I states.
top 25. And meanwhile, and so Wes creates this new embalming fluid. He's like, I'm really excited about this because like part of the problem is the freshness, right? Is
the fresh maker.
He needs a fresh maker, and he's got it now. So he's like, narrator, come back home. And he's like, cool. And so he's like, you'll never believe it. There was a traveling salesman. He got off the train and he was walking around and he came to my house looking while you were gone 2 weeks ago. Came to the house, asked for directions, dropped dead of a heart attack on the spot. And there was like...
And refused any kind of medicine. He was like, no, I tried to help him. And he said, no, thank you, sir. I'd rather just drop dead here in your house.
Yep. And
again, a 12-year-old boy could tell a better story than this.
West was like, what are the odds? I'm a reanimator. Here's a body. So...
And as near as I can tell, the narrator's just like, okay.
Narrator's like... Seems legit. So he's like, can I check him? And he's like, don't worry about it. And he's like, but we got to get moving here, right? Because like nothing lasts forever. So he brings him down there. He's on the slab, and he goes. He's like, okay, first off, I have to like neutralize the embalming agent because like my cool reanimating elixir is not going to work if this stuff is in it. And there's like, checks out. So he shoots him with presumably the thinner, I guess. I don't know. Not really explained. But then the guy starts twitching. And was just like one second. And grabs a pillow-like object. I don't know what a pillow-like object is other than a pillow. And smothers the guy. And there's like, that's weird. And yes?
Well, I don't want to...
So...
Go on.
And then they're like, okay, ready to go. It's like, let me just check one more time that he's dead. And they're like, yep, totally dead. So my stuff will work. They're like a whole thing throughout is like the reagent doesn't work if the subject is at all alive, even mostly alive. Not going to work. So
turns out it doesn't even work if they're dead.
Says you.
Well, that's what we've seen.
So far, I mean,
no,
it's
but
an ongoing
okay, but
process.
here's my question.
This is a lifelong journey.
I'm not okay. Here's my question.
Wait a minute,
that,
Doc.
That wasn't that wasn't an embalming agent,
no,
right? It was like a paralytic agent or something. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And like you read this story now 40 minutes ago. I have read this story probably 10 or 15 times in my life. Keep trying to like give it another shot. It took possibly. It took this study for me to. He wasn't dead. He was paralyzed the whole time.
To begin with.
There's like all the clues were there, and I'm like, God damn it. So yeah, because like he got suffocated. He like, I mean, that should have been a giveaway. But,
so he wasn't actually dead.
But like, there's even subtler things of like, oh no, like the narrator wants to check him, and Wes is like, no, allow me, no, yeah, totally dead. And so like, it took me forever. And I'm glad that I have had this reason to read it very, very closely, because this whole time I thought, like, oh, well, I mean, this embalming fluid is pretty cool. Like, now I knew that he killed him with it.
Right.
My thought was, like, it actually poisons you and kills you, like, at the same time.
But
not
obviously
the
not,
twist.
because, like, if he injected the antidote to the paralyzing agent into him, and then he woke up, and then West had to kill him again.
That was just tremors.
That's the...
I was on board with the narrator. It was like, this seems, unfortunate, but like not unsolvable.
Right. Yeah. I was like, go on, sir. Go on. Let's see where this leads us.
All right. So I have a whole thing in here of the embalming fluid, which now, I'm the idiot because I never realized
you're
it.
never the idiot.
That's fine.
Never give up. Never surrender.
Yeah. So, and that's it. And so the guy, so the traveling salesman is killed and then immediately reanimated. You'd think this would totally work. It doesn't, sort of. It actually kind of ends. Like, this one doesn't end with him, like, escaping and eating people and cannibalism and all that. It just kind of stops.
It ends
I
with
think
him...
Lovecraft got a little bored of the story.
It ends with him saying, like... He's like, I do know that at that moment, I firmly thought the thin lips moved silently, forming syllables I would have vocalized as only now.
Right. Which
in my head, I was like, oh, he's saying, kill me now.
No. Like, because he's asking him, like, what is the afterlife like? And the victim is like, no, I was literally just there. Like, just now. That's what he says.
All right.
So, and just as an aside from Lovecraft's life, this whole like visit to Chicago and a traveling salesman character is kind of neat because like so I don't know how much you know about Lovecraft. This dude knows a lot about Lovecraft, but in Lovecraft's life, his father was a traveling salesman, more or less. Definitely was. He was in Chicago. And he was in Chicago.
Well,
and
you can go to Chicago without being a traveling salesman.
Only traveling salesman allowed.
But, yeah, there was only one reason. It was meat or Chicago or a traveling salesman.
But yeah, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But he was in Chicago when he contracted, well, what Lovecraft described as nervous exhaustion, what everyone else described as syphilis. And then was committed and later. Like, he did come back, but only to be committed. And that's that story. And now we're moving on to, unless you have other things, right?
No, part 5, the horror from the shadows.
Part 5, horror from the shadows. Now this is where it picks up. The horror from the shadow. Do you want to do this one? Okay, I got it.
No, I mean, I again, this is, you know this better than me because I just read it. Well, here's the thing. I read it on the plane on the way over here, but
also it was the middle of the night.
And also British Airways, well, I was like, can I get a glass of wine? And the guy was like,
Here's
and then
4
gave me
bottles of wine.
So I was like, oh, yeah, okay. And then by the time I got to part 3, I have no memory. Mm-hmm. So, because he was like, well, we try to get everybody to fall asleep on these red-eye flights. So I'm like, well done, sir.
So, horror from the shadows. Years have passed, and war has broken out. It's 1915.
That's war, 1915. No, wait,
Yes.
that's more like a 1940s
That's
style.
more 40s, yeah.
It's
1915. It's a great war. And West has gone a little around the bend by this point, and he is just kind of mashing parts together.
I did not like the way he looked at healthy living bodies.
He was very covetous of the healthy. And also looks at him, I think, at one point, at the narrator at one point, I think toward the end. But yeah, he's gone mostly insane. He's like experimenting now. Like, his big revelation is like, hang on. The consciousness, the will, the intellect doesn't merely exist like in the brain, like, you know, these Puritan professor doctors think. It exists throughout the body. And so therefore I could reanimate parts of bodies. And he does.
Why?
So, because
what is the purpose?
He's gone insane. Like, he has continuously failed his sanity checks. He is just like dipping down. And there is the indescribable lizard. Now, if you are an author of fiction, I posit to you it is quite possible to describe it.
You should describe it.
You have chosen not to. So
show don't tell.
Yeah, it's like
true.
Yes. And
it was scaly and it was scary.
Yeah, scaly and scary. That's two things we didn't know before. And so he's got this indescribable lizard, and with like the egg yolk, I guess, he can kind of use it as kind of like a reanimating super glue, and he can like smoosh things together and keep things preserved and all of that, right? And so it was, but anyway, like he's doing all of this, right? And the narrator says, ... reasons why I found his practice of medicine and the companionship of West more and more irritating. I feel like irritating is a little underselling it. Pretty bellissimo.
That's
Lovecraft.
very New Englandy.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know, very.
Oh, that's... Come on, West.
Very, yeah, British stiff upper lip kind of. There's
And so,
understate things.
And so West gets this great idea, right? By 1915, is like, hang on, I know about a great big war going on. Unfortunately, I'm in the United States, and we're not going to enter the war. We're not going to enter the war for another 2 years, and I got to get those bodies now. So he concocts a plan, and that plan is to go to Canada. And he's like, narrator, you're with me. And he's like, but really?
But I have no agency. I just do whatever you want, sir.
Right. Now, interestingly enough, the narrator is unsurprisingly on board, but not for the reasons you think. The narrator, every once in a while, there's a short line in there. It's right here. I think so speaking of West, I think West secretly sneered at my occasional martial enthusiasms and censures of supine neutrality, which is definitely like a Lovecraft political position at the time, where Lovecraft himself wanted to serve in the war, serve in the military, and go to war. Right, it is quite laughable to think of this. But Lovecraft was like pretty on board with like, this like German aggression is kind of like no good. And he has, in his heart of hearts, like a deep love of England. And he believes that because New England sucks and England classic rules, and he believes that like unchecked German aggression is going to be a threat to England eventually. And of course, everything was fine. So, but they did. They went to Canada and they enlisted in the Canadian Expeditionary Force, I believe it's called. Yes, Canadian Expeditionary Force. This actually happened a lot between the U.S. and Canada through like the American Civil War all the way through recent events, where if you happen to be on one side of the Canadian border or one side of the American border and want to get involved in the other guy's wars, like you can pretty much do it if you're like really into it. Most people aren't, which is interesting to me because like the only notion I have of like Canada vis-a-vis American wars is like you go to Canada to avoid going to war, but no, these guys did it the other way. So anyway, I found that interesting. There is, you have something to jump in on here?
No.
You were giving me like a
No,
signal.
I was laughing at that. The idea that they.
Yeah, you cross the Canadian border and to go to war. And yeah, so anyway, they pop over there and they're like, this is the best. And West is especially interested because of this whole body part thing, right? Like he still cares about freshness in their freshmacher. But he needs, he wants more like dismemberment, essentially. And boy, have you got that in
Not
spades.
enough dismemberment.
Yes. So
World War I was great for that.
it was awesome for that. So he's on the Western Front. They're in Flanders. And also turns out they have a friend who gets like introduced like halfway through the story. And the friend is, what is his
Sir
name?
Eric Moreland something.
Eric Clapham, I think, or something like that?
Eric Clapton.
Eric
It's
Clapton.
Eric Clapton.
Yes. You know, now that I think of it, I did see from the prior production here, they had a book by Eric Clapton. I bet they were making that joke. I bet they were. Anyway, I didn't see the last one. Did anybody here see the last
Eric
one?
Clapton wrote a book?
Oh, good. I don't know. I guess. I don't know.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you. So Eric is, Major Sir Eric Moreland
Major.
Clapham Lee. DSO.
So many names.
So very many names. Well, you know.
I can just see his note. I just see irritating.
Yeah. So Clapham Lee turns out is the guy that got them like kind of in the back door on the Canadian Army, and he himself is a doctor. And he's coming to visit. He's coming to camp in Flanders at a battlefield hospital to visit with West and learn more, apparently, about the practice of reanimation. And West is like, I am so on board. I love this dude. Anyway, his plane gets shot down, and he crashes, boom, straight into the camp. And what's the luck? And so he's like, well, I have this guy.
As long as you're here.
Yeah, he's a modern major general. He's all of that, right? And he's like, all right, cool. Let me, I can fix this. So he grabs the body. He severs the head off because it's mostly decapitated anyway from the crash. And he's like, I'm going to check this out, reanimate this part and that part on different sides of the room.
I mean, really, there's nothing else that he could be doing with his time. I mean, right?
He is all. Incidentally, there's another line in here. It's like, oh, and he like saved a bunch of like soldiers' lives. But that's neither here nor there. In the room, in the hospital, it is with blood and lesser human debris almost ankle deep on the slimy floor. Now, ankle deep is pretty deep.
That is, yeah. And they weren't barefoot either.
No.
Like
They've got
boots
shoes
on.
and boots and everything. So, like, that's deep. That's a lot of, you need a lot of sponges for that. So, 3 feet of standing gore, apparently, is what they're doing. And so, anyway, he reanimates this body and ends up creating his most notorious adversary, the headless Dr. Clapham Lee.
The headless Eric Clapton.
The headless Eric Slowhead Clapton, let's call him. And that's it. And then a German bomb lands on the hospital. End of story. So, never going to have to worry about that again. Part 6. Final part. The Tomb Legions. So, years pass. West and his friend are established now in Boston. They have a really nice house. They've definitely leveled up from like Arkham to Bolton, Massachusetts, I think it was.
I remember
Arkham to
Michael Bolton, Massachusetts.
Michael Bolton, Massachusetts, to Boston. And they get a place by a graveyard that's like stupid
Eric Clapton
old.
was never in Boston.
No.
Nobody got it.
Stop.
Boston is a
Yeah,
band.
it took me like a second. Yeah. Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
Sorry, that was. We'll cut that out in post.
So they're in Boston, and turns out they're doing their thing, and presumably Herbert West is still reanimating things and corpses and parts and holes and everything, right? But that doesn't matter because there is an item in the newspaper, and it turns out way back in Arkham at Sefton, remember Sefton Asylum? Did I mention it before? I don't think I did, but
you did.
That's where I did. Okay, but that's where old Doc Halsley, I can't do it. Halsley. It's a hard.
No, wrong button, but it works.
Still works. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's old Dr. Halsley. I don't know. Okay, I'm
Halsey.
Dr. H.
Yes.
He's been in Sefton for 16 years. Remember, we ended part 2 with and then he was there for 16 years. So 16 years has now passed. And so he has been broken out.
In the meantime, he probably got a legal degree. He took some correspondence classes. But you're there for a long time.
Yeah. He's been there for a while. No one seems to have noticed that he is a reanimated cannibal.
Yeah.
But the state of mental health in America in the 20s is
I
not
don't
great.
think that they really look too closely.
Mm-hmm. So, and he's like, oh dang, he escaped. Well, it's the end for me, huh? And then he gets this thing in the mail, and it's a box, and it's a 2x2 box, and all it says is XOXO, your pal, Major Clapham Lee from Flanders. And he's like, double fuck. And then so he's like, listen, we got to burn this thing. Interesting to me. We are never told what is in the box. We have never. And
I assume a leg lamp.
Assume a leg lamp. Yes. Must be Italian. It says fragile on it. So yes, so he gets what we can only assume to be a leg lamp and no other explanation. And he's like, well, we got to take this down to the incinerator. They go down to the incinerator, and incidentally, there was like an exposed tomb in the basement next to the incinerator. And that turned out to be a bad idea because there was a whole big pile of corpses down there. And we meet all of our favorites. We see Dr. Halsey. We see...
You did it!
I did it! Yay! Thank you. The Harlem Smoke is there, and
it's like the clip show at the end of the season. You know,
that's right. And also the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and Dr. Clapham Lee is there too. Major Dr. Clapham Lee.
Major Doctor.
He is. Well,
Doctor.
DSO.
Doctor.
He is there too, and they tear Herbert West to shreds. And that is the end.
I mean, I'm not going to say he had it coming.
He had it coming.
He had it coming. He only had himself to blame.
So now, recall, years have passed since the events of the Great War, and the Major has no head. Don't worry, this is addressed in the text. He has somehow fashioned a wax head that is radiantly beautiful. Which is described this way with like piercing eyes, and it's and like just achingly gorgeous to look at. But he also talks like this because all his voice sounds like it's coming from a box that's at his feet. Now he has the box with him. This to me rules out.
Why did
like
you just put the head on your? Yeah.
It seems to rule out that his head is in the box that he mailed to West.
Oh, whose head was in the box?
Whose head was it?
Gwyneth Paltrow! Oh my God!
It's Gwyneth Paltrow again. She struck again. Wait, Gwyneth Paltrow is the villain in Seven?
Yes.
Spoilers. So all I have written down here is just some words on like traveling while headless, because like he did have to get from Belgium to Boston.
But Dracula did it.
Dracula did it, I guess, you know. And this dude is hella smart. Like, that's the whole point. This is why they reanimated him. And, incidentally, not only is he hella smart, not only does he have a great nervous system, not only does he have no head, but he knows how to reanimate the dead. Underline, underline, underline. And so all of these, this is why they come out of the tomb, because I think he's been setting up shop down there. He has cracked the code of freshness. And, damn it. All right.
The Fresh Maker.
He has cracked
He
the code.
is the fresh maker.
He is der Freshmaker.
The Fresh Maker.
And he knows how to reanimate extremely old corpses, because this is why they're all like human and semi-human and octopeds or whatever. And so they all come out, they tear him to shreds, and they take him back, right? And also, incidentally, maybe not quite killing West, because as we know, there's a sequel. But West doesn't die in the movie in the first one. So, and that is all I have. Oh, yeah. My big question. Did you have anything? Do you have something? I have something after this.
No, I have Phantasm written down because I got some Phantasm vibes.
Oh, yeah,
from
definitely
this.
another Phantasm vibe. If you have not seen the film movie Phantasm, you are in for a treat, because it is bonkers insane. It is not based on anything Lovecraft, but is probably one of the top 5 most Lovecraftian movies I've ever seen in my life. You should definitely see it. It's like early 80s. It makes no sense. Just when you watch this movie, if
there's
you
an
haven't
ice
seen
cream man who appears in all the sequels.
Roll. He's got like
rock and roll ice cream man.
Yeah, he's got a cool. Yes. Oh yeah, Phantasm is so good. Just when you watch it, just know that it's like supposed to feel like a dream, and it make no sense. Yes. But like my question here is like why? So why does Clapham Lee? Why does the Major Dr. Eric Clapham Lee DSO? Why does he seek revenge on West? Like, is it like he clearly like?
What else is he gonna do? He's a headless corpse.
But you play the cards you're dealt.
Yeah, his was like, well, if I got to deal with this, then Herbert West's got to come on.
I just have some question marks of like, why does he feel like he needs to seek revenge, other than it is a pastiche of every kind of gothic horror movie.
I would love to see a book written from his perspective.
Just a story. Yeah, a story written from his.
Let's
Was
do
like,
the
well,
secret, yeah.
bollocks. I have no head. I'm super smart. Because remember, intellect exists in the entire body. And
Right.
what am I going to do for 6 years?
I'm going to get that jerk.
I'm going to get that motherfucker who did that to me.
Yeah.
Because it's not like Wes killed him. It's not like the salesman has like way more
Nobody
motive.
brought him back from the dead. He didn't want to be brought back from the dead.
I don't know why.
People
you can't
don't
just
want
look,
this.
man.
And we have seen
When
this. They
life
don't
makes
want
you
this.
a corpse, you make corpse aid. So, that's
What
it.
would you do?
What would I do if I was returned from the dead with no head?
Yeah.
I'd be like, well, this sucks. But, like, I don't know. I would shake the hand of the man that did it to me because it's like, hey, I've got another chance.
What
Right?
kind of life?
And what kind of... How dare you?
You could be traveling
I mean,
circus?
people who are
Yeah.
deaf and blind can, in fact, navigate the world.
Yes, but that is
How
very
dare
different.
you?
How dare you compare deaf and blind to people who have no heads?
How dare you?
So,
Or who are actually a corpse.
Right.
All right. We are running out of time. I have so many more things to
Oh, we
say
are.
about this.
Yeah.
I've totally forgotten the Q&A section. One thing I want to do, and then we'll get into Q&A. This is not Frankenstein. I don't know if that was clear. It's 6 stories. Frankenstein, strike one. Dr. Frankenstein
it's Frankenstein.
it's Frankenstein, builds the monster from material over the course of 2 years. Freshness is not a problem. So, part 2, the creation is smart, is literate, reads, and like has like at least a legitimate beef against Dr. Frankenstein, who's like super mean to him. West wants nothing but the best for his creations, and so I have no strike 3 because I don't know how baseball works, but I didn't think this through. But I would just say that like I think they are very different stories, and I would posit that like the story of Frankenstein is not a zombie story. It is a creation, like I'm creating the monster, and it's actually, it's obviously much better, but it is a different
Who's
story.
the real monster?
Who is the real monster, et cetera, and it is DeLorean's car, not the DeLorean. So it is. That is not my joke. I stole that joke from a lovely podcast called Dungeons and Daddies. Check it out if you like real play D&D podcasts. But I will say that Herbert West M-Reanimator is, as far as I can tell, if not one of the earliest like science zombie stories. Zombie stories up until this point were all very magical, especially like the Gothic kind of style.
Whereas this one is based on absolute science.
This is based on science and reagents. He says reagents. It's a science word. So, and the indescribable lizard and the right? Like that's not magic.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. So I think this is a perfectly fine, suitable, okay, structured. It's weirdly structured, but okay. Gothic sci-fi horror story, and I am a fan. I will say it right here and now in front of at least half a dozen people that I am a fan of Herbert West Reanimator.
That may have been overestimated.
Yeah. And then I don't know, I've got like 2 pages of me like yelling at ST Joshi. But that is it. Are there any questions from you? And yes.
He's got his hand
What?
up. I can't,
Yes.
yeah, we can't see anything.
You said you had 2 pages of yelling at ST Joshi. What is the most incendiary thing?
I'm not doing that. I will never publish. Yes, that's true. I will say that like, so like there's a quote from Joshi saying Herbert West Reanimator is universally acknowledged as Lovecraft's poorest work, and to that I say no, sir, not universally. It's obviously Haunter in the Dark. Thank you. If you had to stack rank the 68 stories that Lovecraft published during his lifetime, if you must stack rank them, obviously something has to come in last. Obviously, it's Hunter in the Dark. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, like, even if it is the worst, fine. Let's grant that it's the worst. That's still pretty good. How about that? Like, I think we can all get along with that.
I mean, I got the sense that, I mean, because to me, this is one of the more accessible ones. It's like you get,
Yep.
I mean, for those of us that
There's
aren't
no
super into
cosmic
this,
horror.
yeah,
It's
no,
all
it's just
very
like,
gothic
oh,
and
yeah,
stuff,
he
but-
does this thing.
Accessible by modern day standards.
I guess by mine.
Are you modern?
In its time,
Yeah.
it's probably even less accessible.
Yeah, that's
in
true.
its time. So
That's
yes,
true.
the comment from the audience is
Yeah.
that in its time, it's
Okay.
probably even less accessible.
Yeah. No, but I think now, and I guess I always get irritated when I think there's any kind of snobbery, and I feel like
Yeah.
maybe this is like his, I don't know.
I mean,
like,
Josh is picking
yeah.
a side, and he's picking an easy side. So, like, even that, like,
Yeah.
I mean, come out and say, like, Call of Cthulhu kind of sucks. Like, make that your thing.
I mean, if your job is
I
to
don't
be a Lovecraft enologist,
Yeah.
then you have to say
A
you have to
Lovecraftianologist,
you
yes.
have to pick some. You've got to say some
It's
shit for people to
actually
pay attention to you.
Lovecraftianonomy.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
The ology is a little.
Right.
All right. I have so anyway, thank you so much for the question.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you guys so much for for coming out. I mean, we don't know we don't know anybody here. We have one friend who was supposed to be here, but then she ate something and came back to tell us that she was going to vomit.
bailed.
So I was like,
But you can do it during the show.
I was like, please don't vomit during the show. Yeah. So if you're in here, thank you so much, because nobody
Yeah.
knows who we are. But
All right.
we're doing this.
We'll be down in the bar for a little
Love
bit.
of our-
I am happy
Yeah.
to continue discussing
And
Herbert West Reanimator.
God, he will.
And I've got so many more notes. But thank you so much.
I'm happy to talk about like Melrose Place.
No,
Any kind of no. All right.
no, not.
Are you
not
cutting
that.
off my mic?
No, you're done. But thank you so much, and we will sign out. Hey, I got to record this one thing for the podcast, and that is you've been listening to Pod Sock Off, a Lovecraft book club, live from London, England. And we'll do this again for sure, at great expense. And if you like the show, that's great. Leave a review. 5 stars would be great. If it's anything less than that, just keep it to yourself. And if you'd like to reach out, we are on Mastodon because Twitter and Facebook are evil. And we're on Mastodon at Podsothoff at DEFCON Social now. It doesn't matter. You can find it. Just search it. You'll find it.
I created a Facebook page for us.
Stop. Don't tell me that. It's not halal. And I will also read your email. If you email me at hideous@podsothoff.club. It is a real domain. So anyway, thank you so much. Thank you to our lovely audience. And we will catch you next time.